This tomato plant was thriving in June. Lush, green, loaded with fruit, exactly what every gardener dreams of. By the third week of August, it was yellow, wilting, and half dead. And the person who killed it wasn't a beginner. She'd been gardening for 15 years. I'm going to show you why this happens to almost every single gardener in America. Not once in a while. Almost every year in almost every garden. And it's not one mistake. It's 15 of them. Small, invisible habits that quietly destroy an entire season's work in the hottest, most unforgiving month of the year. August doesn't kill gardens overnight. It kills them slowly, one small oversight at a time, until one morning you walk outside and everything you built since spring is gone. 15 mistakes, all common, all fixable, all things you're probably doing right now without even realizing it. And I'll tell you this right now, mistake number 11 is the one almost nobody talks about. Most gardening channels won't even mention it because it goes against everything you've been taught about watering your plants. If you've ever lost a garden in August and couldn't figure out why, this video is going to answer that question for you. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you're going to know exactly which of these 15 mistakes is happening in your own backyard right now. Let's start with the first one, and it's probably happening to you today. Mistake 1. Sowing lettuce and spinach straight into hot August. Soil. Thermodormancy. Most gardeners assume that because lettuce and spinach grow fast, planting them early in August will just get them ahead of schedule. It seems logical. Hot weather, fast growth, right? Except lettuce and spinach seeds don't work like that at all. They're cool season seeds, and heat doesn't speed them up. It can switch them off completely. There are actually two different ways heat stops these seeds. The first is called thermal inhibition. Basically, the seed goes into a temporary pause the moment it senses high heat, and it can wake up fine once things cool down. But if that hot, hydrated state drags on too long, the seed slips into something far worse: thermodormancy, a semi-permanent shutdown. Once that happens, the seed won't germinate even if the soil cools back down afterward. The window is brutally narrow. Lettuce and spinach want soil between 59 degrees Fahrenheit and 71.6 degrees Fahrenheit to germinate well. Push that up to 80 degrees Fahrenheit and germination rates crash. Go past 82 degrees Fahrenheit and you're often looking at total failure. Inside the seed, this is being driven by a hormone called abscisic acid, building up while the growth hormone gibberellin gets suppressed, which physically locks the embryo in place. According to the University of Florida Extension, this is such a predictable problem that researchers have found seed priming hydrating seeds slowly under controlled conditions before drying and planting them can actually break thermodormancy in lettuce varieties. Without that kind of intervention, unprimed seed sown directly into scorching August soil often results in almost no seedlings emerging at all. This hits hardest in the southern U.S., the desert Southwest, and USDA zones 7 through 10, where August soil routinely blows past 85 degrees Fahrenheit. But even Midwest and Northeast gardeners get caught out during late summer heat waves. And it's not just lettuce and spinach. Peas struggle the same way once soil crosses that same threshold. So what actually works? Get a probe thermometer and check your soil temperature at seed depth before you plant. Don't guess. Sow in the late afternoon between 2 and 4 p.m. so the seed catches the cooler part of the soil's daily cycle rather than the peak heat. Lay a 30–50% shade cloth or even wooden boards directly over the seeded row to knock 5–10 degrees Fahrenheit off the surface temperature. Just remember to pull those boards the moment seedlings emerge, or you'll stretch and weaken them. Or sidestep the whole problem by starting seeds indoors at 65–70 degrees Fahrenheit and transplanting once the outdoor heat breaks. But even if you get your seeds to sprout at the right temperature, there's a second, sneakier problem waiting. One that has nothing to do with heat and everything to do with the calendar itself. 2. Trusting the seed packet's days to maturity, the fall factor. Here's a mistake that looks completely reasonable on paper. The seed packet says 60 days to maturity. You count 60 days back from your first frost date, plant on that day, and assume you're covered. Except that math only works in spring, and using it in fall quietly sets you up to lose your harvest to the cold. Why? Because spring and fall are mirror opposites in terms of light and heat. In spring, days are getting longer and warmer, which accelerates growth. In fall, it's the reverse. Daylight is shrinking, temperatures are dropping, and that slows photosynthesis and slows growth right along with it. Horticultural science actually has a name for this slowdown: the fall factor. According to Virginia Cooperative Extension, this fall factor typically adds 10 to 14 extra days onto whatever maturity date is printed on the packet. And there's an even harder deadline lurking behind that: the Persephone period. The point once day length drops below 10 hours a day, where plant growth essentially stalls out entirely. Miss your window before that point, and your crop is left half-grown, decaying or stunted through the rest of the season. This is a bigger problem in northern zones, zones 3 through 6, where the season is already short and frost comes early. But ironically, it also traps southern gardeners in zones 7 through 9 who wait for that first fall-feeling weather in September to start planting, not realizing they've already blown past their real August window. The crops most at risk here are the slow frost-tolerant biennials: carrots, beets, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, anything that needs real time to bulk up before a hard freeze. The fix is a simple backward planning formula. Find your average first frost date using NOAA or your local extensions database. Subtract the crop's listed days to maturity, then subtract another 10 to 14 days for the fall factor, and finally add a 14-day harvest buffer on top of that. For frost-tender crops like bush beans or summer squash, you want the entire growth cycle wrapped up at least 2 weeks before that average frost date. No exceptions. Now, let's say you've nailed the timing and you're heading to the nursery to grab bigger, more mature transplants to save time. That instinct is about to backfire in a very specific way. 3. Planting overgrown, root-bound brassica transplants, buttoning. It feels like a shortcut worth taking. Buy the biggest, most developed broccoli or cauliflower transplants you can find, or let your own seedlings sit a little longer in their trays for a head start. Except in brassicas, that head start can permanently sabotage the whole harvest. Young brassica plants are balancing two competing programs: grow leaves or start forming a head. When a seedling gets stuck too long in a small cell, its roots become root-bound, nutrients run out, and it dries out faster than it should. The plant reads all of that as a serious stress signal, so it pumps out stress hormone abscisic acid, which shuts down vegetative growth and pushes the plant to jump straight into reproduction, way too early. The problem is, a root-bound seedling doesn't have nearly enough leaf area or energy stored up to build a real head. So instead, you get a tiny, useless button that immediately bolts into yellow flowers. Research published in Agronomic Spotlights found that broccoli and cauliflower transplants become highly prone to buttoning once they've developed more than 8 to 14 true leaves, or once their dry weight passes about 1.1 grams. Beyond that point, they don't grow, they stall. This shows up constantly across the Midwest, Northeast, and Southeast, wherever fall brassicas get started in August. Cauliflower is by far the most sensitive to this stress, much more than cabbage or broccoli, and early maturing varieties are genetically wired to button even faster than long season types. The fix is simple in theory. Only plant transplants with 4 to 6 true leaves, healthy uncoiled roots, and thin, flexible stems. If a stem looks thick, woody, or purple-tinted, that plant is already past the point of no return. Don't bother planting it. If a heat wave forces you to delay, just move the trays somewhere cool and lightly shaded to slow them down rather than letting them sit and stress in the heat. And once they do go in the ground, a starter fertilizer high in phosphorus helps minimize transplant shock and pushes rapid root establishment. Speaking of getting the ground ready, there's a prep step almost every gardener does before planting that, in August specifically, does more damage than good. 4. Deep tilling bone-dry August soil. Clearing out the summer garden with a rototiller feels productive. Loose, clean, weed-free soil. What's not to like? In spring, this is standard practice. In August, when the soil is dry and baked hard, it's one of the most destructive things you can do to your fall bed. A rototiller's high-speed blades shred dry soil aggregates into fine dust, wiping out the natural pore structure that lets air and water move through. On top of that, deep tilling exposes the subsoil, letting deep moisture evaporate rapidly. moisture your seeds desperately need to germinate. Then the first time it rains or gets irrigated, all that pulverized dust settles into a hard, impermeable crust on the surface, a crust that small seeds simply can't push through. Extension guides from Kansas State University confirm that over-tilling wrecks soil structure, leading to poor drainage and surface crusting, and that sowing into freshly tilled, unmulched soil can cut seedling emergence for small-seeded crops by up to 60% compared to no-till or minimal-till beds. This is especially bad news in heavy clay regions, the Piedmont Southeast, parts of the Midwest, and the Southwest, where small-seeded crops like carrots, parsnips, lettuce, and spinach take the biggest hit, since they simply don't have the strength to break through a crusted surface. Instead of deep tilling, cut summer weeds and crop residue off at the soil line and do only a light 1–2 inch surface cultivation. And to stop crusting from forming right over your seed row, replace the topsoil in that furrow with a light layer of vermiculite, clean compost, or fine sand. It keeps a loose, breathable channel open for the seedling to push through. Once your bed is prepped right, the next mistake usually happens the moment you move plants from indoors to outdoors, and it's one that can kill even perfectly healthy seedlings within hours. 5. Skipping the hardening off period for indoor-grown transplants. If you've been protecting your seedlings indoors under grow lights or in a greenhouse, it's tempting to just move them straight into the garden once the weather looks warm enough. After all, they're healthy, right? Except healthy indoors and ready for the outdoors are two very different things. Indoor-grown seedlings develop thin cuticles, oversized and inefficient stomata, and weak cell walls, because they've never had to deal with wind, temperature swings, or intense light. Drop them straight into the harsh late summer environment, and they're suddenly hit with a massive vapor pressure deficit, dry wind, and intense UV all at once. Their roots simply can't pull in water fast enough to keep up with how much the leaves are losing through transpiration. The result is hydraulic failure. Cells dry out, leaves scorch, and in bad cases, the plant just dies. Making it worse, the simple act of transplanting suppresses the root's ability to absorb nitrate for over 6 hours and potassium for up to 2 hours, right when the plant needs those nutrients most. Trials from Clemson Cooperative Extension found that unhardened transplants suffer a 60% drop in survival rate compared to seedlings that went through a proper 10 to 14 day hardening off process. This is a huge issue in zones 7 through 10, the Southwest and the Midwest, where August sun and heat regularly peak, and it hits high-value transplants hardest: broccoli, cabbage, kale, and late tomatoes. The fix is a gradual 7 to 14 day hardening off routine. Start by putting seedlings in a shaded, protected outdoor spot for just 2 to 3 hours a day. Then slowly stretch that exposure over the following 2 weeks. While they're still indoors, run an oscillating fan near them. The light stress trains sturdier stems. And when it's finally time to plant, do it on a cloudy day, late in the afternoon, or right before a light rain. Anything that reduces that first shock of exposure. Even after your transplants survive the move outside, there's still a depth-related trap waiting for anything you're sowing straight from seed. 6. Sowing seeds too shallow. In August, spring planting depth and August planting depth should not be the same number. But most gardeners use the same rule for both, because they're worried that planting deeper means seeds won't be able to emerge. In August, that fear is backward. The top quarter to half inch of soil isn't a safe zone anymore. It's a hostile thermal layer that heats up and dries out within hours. Bare surface soil in direct sun can hit 110 degrees Fahrenheit to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Seeds sitting at that shallow depth are exposed to temperatures that can literally denature their proteins and kill them outright. And even if they survive the heat, that surface layer dries out almost instantly after watering, which is a problem because germination depends on a steady intake of water called imbibition. If a seed starts to imbibe and sprout, then dries out even for a few hours, the emerging root tip desiccates and the seed is done. Data from Oklahoma State University Extension confirms that shallow sown seeds in August suffer high rates of heat-related death and poor germination, while seeds placed slightly deeper sit in a cooler, more stable moisture zone. This is a bigger risk in arid regions like the Southwest and Intermountain West, and in sandy soils along the Gulf Coast and coastal plains where moisture disappears fast. The crops hit hardest are the tiny, slow-germinating seeds, carrots, parsnips, and beets, which need continuous moisture for 2 to 3 weeks just to sprout. The fix plant most direct sown fall vegetables 1.5 to 2 times deeper than you would in spring, as long as they don't need light to germinate. For light-dependent seeds, like certain lettuce varieties, keep them shallow but protect surface moisture with a thin layer of organic mulch, no more than 1/2 inch, or a shade cloth over the bed, until they emerge. Getting the seed depth right matters, but none of it works if the soil around that seed is chemically working against the plant. And that's exactly what happens with one very common fertilizing mistake. 7. Overloading soil with high ammonium fertilizer or fresh manure. After clearing out the summer garden, it's common to want to give the soil a big boost before fall planting, often with a heavy dose of synthetic ammonium fertilizer or fresh, uncured manure. It feels like you're being generous with your plants. In reality, in warm, compacted August soil, this can trigger something called ammonium toxicity. Plants can safely store extra nitrate inside their cells, but free ammonium is a completely different story. It's toxic, damaging cell membranes, disrupting photosynthesis, and hurting root development. Normally, soil bacteria convert ammonium into safer nitrate fairly quickly, but that conversion needs oxygen. If the soil is compacted, waterlogged, or crusted at the surface, those bacteria get suppressed, and ammonium builds up in the root zone, damaging root hairs, browning tap roots, and cutting off water uptake. Research from the University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources shows that ammonium toxicity is especially destructive in warm, saturated soils, damaging both roots and the plant's internal water-conducting tissue, which leads to serious stunting and seedling loss. This shows up most in the southern and midwestern U.S., where heavy clay soils get compacted and then suddenly saturated by intense August thunderstorms. The most sensitive crops are solanaceous transplants, like peppers, tomatoes, and eggplants, along with leafy cool-season crops like lettuce, spinach, and coli crops. The fix is to skip high ammonium fertilizers and uncomposted manure during this warm setup period entirely. Build fertility instead with fully cured compost or slow-release organic fertilizer. If you do need synthetic nitrogen, choose calcium nitrate or potassium nitrate. They deliver nitrogen already in nitrate form, so there's no ammonium buildup risk. And keep beds well drained and avoid overwatering, so the beneficial bacteria that handle any ammonium conversion stay active. Fixing your soil chemistry is only half the equation though, because even great soil can't save seeds that were already dying before you planted them. 8. Planting leftover spring seeds without checking vigor. Reusing leftover seed from spring feels like common sense. Why buy new seed if you've already got some in the drawer? The problem is that seed stored through a hot, humid summer in a shed or garage often loses far more viability than gardeners expect, especially cool-season varieties like lettuce and spinach. Seed vigor is extremely sensitive to storage conditions. High heat and humidity speed up the seed's internal respiration, burning through its stored energy reserves and breaking down cell membranes. That degraded seed, when sown into hot August soil, germinates unevenly, sprouts weakly, and becomes far more vulnerable to damping off and heat stress. According to the University of Minnesota Extension, seed viability drops sharply once seed is exposed to temperatures above 70 degrees Far and humidity above 50%, and lettuce and spinach seeds in particular can slide into deep secondary dormancy after just one season of poor storage. This is especially critical in hot, humid regions, the Southeast, Gulf Coast, and Midwest, where summer humidity accelerates seed decline fastest. Lettuce, spinach, carrots, and onions are the most vulnerable, since they all need strong vigor just to establish in warm soil. The fix: use fresh seed for August plantings whenever possible, and store any leftover seed in an airtight container somewhere cool, dry, and ideally refrigerated between 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Before planting, run a quick germination test. Wrap 10 seeds in a damp paper towel inside a zip-top bag and check after 7 to 10 days. If fewer than 70% sprout, toss that seed lot and buy fresh. Even with great seed and great soil though, there's still the surface of the ground itself to think about. And leaving it bare is one of the most underestimated mistakes on this whole list. 9. Leaving the soil bare instead of mulching immediately. A lot of gardeners plant first and plan to mulch later. Once things are bigger, mostly because bare soil feels easier to weed and water in the meantime. But in August, bare soil isn't neutral. It's actively working against your plants, acting like a solar heat sink that absorbs and holds radiation. Bare soil in direct summer sun can reach 120 degrees Fahrenheit to 140 degrees Fahrenheit at the surface, with root zone temperatures at 4 to 6 inches deep, still sitting at a punishing 90 degrees Fahrenheit to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. At those levels, beneficial soil microbes die off, delicate roots get baked, and moisture evaporates fast. Once soil temperature crosses 95 degrees Fahrenheit, the plant is losing water through its leaves faster than the roots can pull it back in. Evapotranspiration can jump by as much as 85%, leaving seedlings to wilt and fail even with regular watering. Research from Michigan State University Extension shows mulch soil stays significantly cooler than bare soil, and that a 3 to 4 inch layer of organic mulch can drop surface temperatures by 10 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit almost immediately. This is most severe in the southern U.S., the Southwest, and California, where intense sun and big daily temperature swings are the norm, and it's especially fatal for newly set cool season transplants like broccoli, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts, which want root zones under 85 degrees Fahrenheit. The fix is simple. Mulch the moment you plant, not weeks later. Use 3 to 4 inches of clean straw, shredded leaves, finished compost, or pine boughs around transplants. For direct sown rows, use a lighter, open layer, about half an inch of loose straw right over the seeded row so it protects the seed bed without smothering the emerging seedlings. Once they're established, you can thicken that layer for ongoing heat protection and weed control. Mulching solves a lot. But if you're gardening in a raised bed, especially a metal one, there's a heat problem mulch alone can't fully fix. 10. Assuming raised beds behave like in-ground soil. Raised beds and containers have exploded in popularity, and a lot of gardeners assume they're simply a better version of in-ground gardening. But raised beds, especially ones made of galvanized metal, heat up in a completely different way because they're cut off from the Earth's natural ability to buffer temperature. Raised beds absorb radiant heat directly through their exposed side walls, which speeds up how fast that heat transfers into the soil inside. On a 90 degrees Fahrenheit day, an unshaded metal raised bed can push its root zone temperature to 6 inches down, past 95 to 105 degrees Fahrenheit, while in-ground soil at that same depth stays a much cooler 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Once root zone heat consistently tops 95 degrees Fahrenheit, plants respond defensively, stomata close, photosynthesis slows, and roots lose their ability to take up water and nutrients efficiently, even when the soil isn't dry. Studies from Utah State University Extension found that unmulched raised beds lose soil moisture 20% to 40% faster than in-ground beds, thanks to greater surface area and wind exposure, and that this rapid drying and overheating badly damages roots and suppresses beneficial soil biology. This structural heating problem is especially common in urban gardens and southern zones, zones 7 through 13, where metal raised beds are everywhere. It hits cool season crops the hardest: brassicas, leaf lettuce, spinach, and root vegetables. The fix: line the interior metal walls with rigid foam board or a natural fiber liner before filling the bed with soil to insulate it from that direct heat transfer. Install a 30–50% shade cloth over the bed on a simple PVC arch frame during peak afternoon hours, roughly 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. And when arranging plants, put the heat-sensitive cool season varieties toward the center of the bed, using tougher heat-loving companion plants around the outer edges to help shade the soil. Once your bed's temperature is under control, there's still the question of how you're watering it. And this next mistake is one of the most widespread of all. 11. Watering shallow and frequently. Instead of deep and rarely quick daily sprinklings, feel like the responsible thing to do in August heat. The surface looks dry, so a light watering seems to make sense. But shallow, frequent watering is actually one of the least efficient ways to water in searing summer conditions because most of that water evaporates before it ever reaches the roots. When you water shallowly and often, only the top half-inch of soil actually gets hydrated. That forces roots to grow horizontally near the surface instead of digging down, and those shallow roots are far more exposed to wind damage, temperature swings, and drought stress. On top of that, wetting the foliage every day creates a warm, humid environment that's perfect for fungal diseases like downy and powdery mildew, which can wipe out young seedlings fast. Research from Purdue Extension confirms that shallow daily watering produces shallow root systems and much higher drought vulnerability, while deep, infrequent watering builds deep root systems capable of pulling moisture from the subsoil. This is a major cause of crop failure across every U.S. region, but it's especially damaging in dry, windy areas like the Great Plains in the West, where surface evaporation is extreme. Direct-sown root vegetables like carrots and beets, along with newly set transplants, take the biggest hit since they need deep, stable moisture to build strong roots. The fix is to switch from frequent overhead watering to deep, slow drip irrigation or soaker hoses run underneath a thick mulch layer. Apply about 1 to 1.5 inches of water in a single weekly session, letting it soak deep into the soil. To know when to water again, check the soil 3 to 4 inches down. If it's still damp there, hold off. Getting your watering schedule right matters, but there's one watering step that has to happen before you even plant a single seed. And skipping it is a mistake that sabotages germination from day one. 12. Skipping pre-irrigation the day before planting. Plenty of gardeners sow seeds or set transplants directly into dry August soil and then water heavily right after, assuming that's enough. It's not. Dry, hot late summer soil is often hydrophobic, meaning it actually repels and pulls water away from the seed or root ball instead of absorbing it evenly. When water hits dry, baked soil, it tends to pool on the surface or run off rather than soaking in uniformly. That can displace small seeds entirely and wash out your planting furrows, causing patchy, uneven germination. Worse, seeds sown directly into that dry, hot soil are exposed to surface temperatures that can exceed 110 degrees Fahrenheit before they even get a chance to sprout. And if a seed starts to imbibe water and then dries out again, the emerging root simply desiccates and dies. Guidance from Virginia Tech Extension emphasizes pre-watering beds a full 24 hours before planting, since it cools the soil profile, restores deep moisture, and breaks that surface hydrophobicity, so seeds land in direct contact with a cool, evenly moist soil column. This is especially critical in clay-heavy regions of the Midwest and Southeast, and in the arid West, where soil bakes and compacts hard under summer sun. Small, direct-sown fall seeds, carrots, beets, lettuce, onions are the most affected since they all need constant moisture just to germinate. The fix: thoroughly water your bed 24 hours before you plant. About 1 to 1.5 inches of water, enough to soak deep and cool the whole soil profile. If you're direct sowing, open your furrows, water them directly, let them drain slightly, and then place your seeds. That single extra step dramatically improves how evenly and reliably your seeds come up. Of course, there's a flip side to underwatering, and overcorrecting in the other direction creates a completely different disaster underground. 13. Keeping seed beds constantly saturated, damping off. To fight August heat, a lot of gardeners keep their seed beds constantly wet, muddy, even under the assumption that more water is always better when it's hot. It isn't. A saturated bed becomes anaerobic, meaning it loses the oxygen seeds and roots need to function, and that sets the stage for a disease that can wipe out an entire seed row, damping off. Germination and root growth both require oxygen for basic cellular respiration. When soil pores are completely filled with water, that oxygen simply isn't available, which slows or stops germination and can rot seeds before they even sprout. On top of that, saturated soil is the perfect environment for water molds and soil-borne fungi, Pythium, Phytophthora, Rhizoctonia, Fusarium, which use swimming spores to attack the tender tissue of newly emerged seedlings, collapsing them right at the soil line. Research from the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension shows that damping off pathogens thrive in warm, wet soil between 64 degrees Fahrenheit and 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and once a seedling is infected, it's already too late to save it. This problem is most common in the humid southeast, east coast, and Midwest, where warm, moist conditions are ideal for these fungi. It threatens a huge range of direct sown crops: beans, brassicas, lettuce, onions, tomatoes, and peppers. The fix is to maintain even, sponge-like moisture instead of saturation. Once seedlings emerge, let the top half-inch of soil dry out slightly between waterings. That dry barrier helps stop fungal spores from spreading. Improve drainage by working in well-rotted compost, subsoiling, or planting in raised rows, and give plants proper spacing since good airflow keeps that damp, disease-friendly microclimate from forming in the first place. Water management solves a lot of problems above the soil line, but there's an entirely different kind of threat waiting underground that most gardeners never even think to check for. 14. Ignoring soil-borne pests and nematodes. Before planting, most gardeners plant their fall crops assuming the soil behaves the same way it did in spring. But August is actually peak season for some of the most destructive soil pests around, especially plant parasitic root knot nematodes. Root knot nematodes burrow into root tissue to feed, causing swellings called galls that choke off the plant's ability to absorb water and nutrients. Warm, late summer soil is exactly the environment these nematodes thrive in. Between 78.8 degrees Fahrenheit and 96.8 degrees Fahrenheit, their reproduction and aggressiveness can jump by as much as 133%, causing serious root damage to young, unestablished seedlings. And that root damage doesn't stop there. It opens the door for fungal pathogens like Fusarium, Pythium, and Verticillium wilt to move in as well. Studies on nematode reproduction show that virulence and egg-laying peak between 89.6 degrees Fahrenheit and 93.2 degrees Fahrenheit, resulting in root biomass losses of up to 60%, and that this nematode damage also lets other harmful soil organisms infect the plant, compounding the failure. This is most destructive in the southern United States, USDA zones 7 through 10, the Gulf Coast, and California, where soil stays warm for extended periods. The most vulnerable crops are tomatoes, peppers, okra, carrots, and brassicas. To protect against this, inspect the roots of your summer crops as you pull them. Galls or rot on those roots are a clear warning sign of nematode pressure in that bed. If you've had trouble before, try soil solarization in June and July. Ahead of fall planting, cover moist tilled soil with clear plastic for 6 to 8 weeks, trapping enough solar heat to kill off nematodes and pathogens. If solarization isn't practical, choose resistant varieties, look for N or VFN on the seed packet, and rotate susceptible crops out of infested beds. There's one final piece of this puzzle, and it's the one most gardeners skip entirely because it doesn't feel urgent, even though it quietly undermines everything else you've done right. 15. Never testing or adjusting soil pH and micronutrients. After a full summer of heavy feeding crops, gardeners often assume whatever fertilizer they applied back in spring is still enough to carry a second planting. It usually isn't, and skipping a soil test before fall planting is one of the quietest, most overlooked causes of crop failure on this entire list. Summer crops pull hard on the soil, depleting nitrogen, phosphorus, and key micronutrients like boron and molybdenum. Sow into that depleted, unadjusted soil, and you get slow growth, weak roots, and specific developmental disorders. Brassicas planted where soil pH drops below 6.0 can't absorb molybdenum properly, which causes leaf browning known as whiptail. Boron deficiency in warm soil causes hollow stems and brown curds in broccoli and cauliflower. And soil pH even affects disease pressure directly. Clubroot, a disease of crucifers, thrives specifically in acidic soil. Data from Clemson University shows most vegetable crops prefer a slightly acidic to neutral pH between 6.0 and 7.0, and that adjusting pH and working in compost before planting can cut the rate of nutrient deficiency disorders by up to 80%. This issue is most critical in regions with naturally acidic, weathered soils, the East Coast, Pacific Northwest, and Southeast. And it hits heavy-feeding brassicas and root vegetables hardest, since both need strong boron and calcium levels to develop properly. The fix: get a professional soil test done before your August planting window. If it comes back acidic, below 6.0, apply agricultural lime or dolomitic limestone to bring the pH back into range. Work in 2 to 3 inches of compost or well-rotted manure to restore organic matter and micronutrients. And for boron-sensitive crops like cauliflower and broccoli, apply a targeted micronutrient amendment, like borax or solubor, according to your soil test recommendations, to support healthy, solid stem growth. So here's the real takeaway. Fall gardening failure almost never comes down to bad luck. It comes down to 15 very specific, very fixable mistakes: wrong soil temperature, wrong timing, wrong depth, wrong watering, wrong fertilizer, and skipped prep steps that most gardeners don't even know matter in August. The good news is, every single one of these has a clear, research-backed fix. Check your soil temperature before you sow. Build in extra days for the fall factor. Use young, unstressed transplants. Go easy on the tiller. Harden off your seedlings properly. Plant a little deeper. Skip the high ammonium fertilizer. Use fresh seed. Mulch immediately. Watch your raised beds. Water deep, not often. Pre-water your beds. Never let them stay soggy. Check for nematodes. And test your soil before you plant a single seed. Get even half of these right, and you'll already be ahead of most fall gardeners out there. Now, knowing exactly what to plant in each of these conditions is a whole different question. And if you're not sure which fall crops actually make sense for your zone and your soil, that's exactly what my next video breaks down. Go check that one out next, so you're not just avoiding mistakes, you're planning the right things from the very start.